lot of people who are at least pretty open to getting to know themselves better are able to recognize and acknowledge that there's something exiled here, right? That there's some inner feeling of inadequacy or of shame or of unresolved grief, or of deep fear. Those are some of the really common kind of exiled emotions. Because a lot of times parts don't want to be doing what they're doing.
Exactly.
Just doing it because they feel like they have to. Ultimately, if we go to the unburdening you talked about, where we can work to really get in touch with that exiled part and help that part to let go of and move away from, become more free from this sense of shame or inadequacy. But what exiles can believe sometimes is that because of this inadequacy, I'm not going to be loved. I'm going to be rejected.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Paul Bryant. I am the owner and founder of Witness to Love Family Counseling Services. I am here with licensed professional counselor David Edwards. Hello, David. How are you doing today?
Sam, good. Thank you.
Praise God.
Glad
Awesome.
to be with you.
Awesome. Before we get started today, tell us about your practice, the name of your practice, where people can get a hold of you.
Okay. Yeah, so my practice is St. Joseph Counseling in Gilbert, right around Lindsay and Warner. And I've been there in that space and in my practice for about almost 5 years. It's just a solo private practice, just me, but I share that space with a handful of other Catholic therapists, and we each have our own practice.
Awesome.
People can get a hold of me through my website, stjosephcounseling.com, stjosephcounseling.com, or email me, david@stjosephcounseling.com.
Awesome. Sounds great. Tell us a little bit about your life today. Who are you? Are you married? Do you have children? What's life like for you today?
Yeah, so married. My wife and I are coming up on 10 years this January. Pretty excited about that milestone. We have 4 kids, 3 girls, 8, 6, and 3. And then finally a boy who just turned 1 a couple of months ago. It's a madhouse. It's chaotic a lot of times. And so real high moments and low moments and challenges and joys and everything. And but beautiful kids.
Often talking to my clients, I'll tell them, there's no studies on family life with couples with more than 2 children, right? So we're in new territory when we choose to be open to life and have more than 2 children, right? So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I guess we found that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where'd you grow up?
More or less, I'm Arizona native, as close as you can to be a native. Born in Michigan, but my family moved here when I was 3. So I've grown up, for the most part, in the Gilbert area, Gilbert, Mesa. Went away a little while for some different things, but otherwise, after getting married, my wife and I, we lived in Tucson for a few years. But then we just wanted to come right back to Gilbert again. We love it there. And the house we live in now has the same floor plan as the house I grew up in.
Oh, how
and
neat.
is about a mile away from that home and about a half a mile away from where she grew up. So I guess we're just 2 people who just want to stay, pretty close to home.
That's awesome. Arizona natives.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about in your household growing up. How many siblings did you grow up with?
I have an older sister and a younger brother. So 3 of us. Sister's a few years older. Brother's 7 years younger. So a bit more distance between us growing up.
Got it.
These days, though, we are really close. Really, I've been grateful to have a brother.
Yes.
It's a gift, and we're in a men's group together too, and really close.
Yes.
And so I have a hope that God willing, we have more children. That God also be willing, we have another boy. I mean, we will receive who the Lord gives us. But I have this hope that my little guy Joseph that he can have a brother.
Awesome.
Just 'cause,
I love the language you use. It's a gift. My brother's a gift, right? Life is
Yeah.
a gift, right? So that's
Yes.
really beautiful.
mhm.
How about telling us a little bit about what inspired you to become a therapist? Maybe a little bit of history about how that came about.
I could start pretty early, I think, um, and yeah, there's some definite personal elements here. So um, when I was little, I had some difficult experiences of kind of socially being a bit of a loner, kind of outcast, kind of maybe through like junior high, more or less. And but also, I think there was just something kind of natural in me that that I could kind of get people. Just a gift there. Like I kind
Like
of
you
like
can understand people?
yeah, understand them.
Yes.
And so when I was really young, and there's some distinct memories around like first, second grade, where I would just feel like I could see through people,
Wow.
and just kind of like, and there was a lot of anger there, why you're acting this way, you're not authentic, and especially people who I felt were hurtful toward me, right? Like sometimes peers who were maybe bullies. I didn't particularly get bullied, but people who were unkind,
Yes.
or showing off, or different stuff, right? And so there'd be this anger, like I could see through them, and that's not really you, and that kind of sat there for a while, right? This anger, maybe even hatred, you could say.
Yes.
And it took quite a bit, as I grew older, and many different kind of directions I went with some missionary work and some own personal conversion in my heart, and encounters, especially with other people who were loving in ways that I needed to kind of soften that. And
Yes.
so I think that early kind of understanding of people that had a lot of anger with it, needed a kind of redemption.
Yes.
But it was the seed, like an early seed of this desire to journey with people and help them. And so some other experiences, I served with a couple of mission organizations, Net Ministries, St. Paul's Outreach at ASU, working with youth and then young adults. And I was a seminarian for a time, and that was a big experience. While in the seminary, I participated in counseling, or saw a psychologist there, some therapy, and that was helpful for me. And also just saw that these men, seminarians, priests, are human.
Yes.
And so there was this desire to work with seminarians and priests, which I'm grateful I've been able to do a little bit so far since I've been practicing, been in practice. But I found the therapy there and the relationships there to be really helpful for me,
Yes.
and even healing to some degree. And then, so I would say around that time, I really felt confident of whatever I was going to do. I wanted to help people, to journey with people in some way,
That's awesome.
and to use that gift of understanding the inner world of the person,
Yes.
to love that is something that's meant to be extended in love toward
Yeah.
another. And
Yeah, I love
to
what
do
you
that.
said. This idea had a desire or a gift of journeying with people,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because I find in counseling, I mean, that's what we're doing, right? We're
Yeah.
we're going on a journey with people. In some ways, we're a guide,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes
Yeah.
we're just going with them, even into really dark places,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that sounds really beautiful the way you frame that, right? Journeying with people.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you actually became a therapist? Where'd you go to school? Right? What was the process for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had finished my undergrad in psychology, and then got married in 2015, and then I, I I've something in me was still indecisive, and I couldn't settle on something. So I installed pool fences for about a year.
Yes, yes.
That was what I was doing. And then I got a job working for a crisis line. And that was the first time I entered into, in my career, into kind of the mental health field or the helping profession. So Southern Arizona, Tucson, suicide crisis hotline, just taking phone calls and triage, and I enjoyed that work, challenging work, and so it was stewing around in my head. Should I pursue some type of psychology, become a psychologist, or something like that? And I didn't really understand the different kind of levels of the master's level, doctoral level, and all that. But so I did some research. I came across Divine Mercy University, and I was still pretty on the fence. But I got on a phone call with someone there, and she said, "Oh, we have a cohort starting in like 6 weeks, and if you jump in now, we can give you some big scholarship
Yes.
money available." So I talked to my wife, and was like, "All right, let's do it." So I jumped in, and so then that was 2.5 or so years for the master's program, Divine Mercy University in Arlington, Virginia,
Yes.
formerly the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. And so
Okay.
they give doctoral degrees in clinical psychology as well as master's degrees in clinical mental health counseling. So I did the online clinical mental health counseling program.
That sounds
Did my
amazing.
master's there.
And
At
that's a
the
Catholic school.
It's Catholic. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Was that
it's great.
important to you that you get your degree from a Catholic institution?
Yeah, I'd say it was a non-negotiable to me, because I see what the world is like, and also maybe I didn't really have the words for this at the time, but today I'm more convicted than ever that if I want to be in the business of helping people to be the best humans that they can be, to truly flourish as a human being, then um, then I'd really be foolish to imagine that I could do that somehow divorced from a relationship with the one who created humans, who
Yes,
designed our psychology and
absolutely.
our inner lives. So I knew that I couldn't separate that, and I feared that if I went to a school that didn't have a Catholic identity, that
Hmm.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah,
That I would be feeling really forced, or that or at least that there'd be something really missing,
yeah.
from what I needed. So yeah, that was pretty clear for me. And once I talked with Divine Mercy University, because there's not a lot of Catholic graduate schools for
For counseling.
psychology or
Yeah,
counseling.
awesome.
So
So, can you share any particular moments at Divine Mercy that were transformational for you in the process of your education?
hmm. It's funny, what first came to mind was some difficult moments.
Yes, yes,
Some professors that I butted heads with and
yeah.
had hard times with. So I don't know what I have to say about those. Maybe I'm still waiting to see some of the fruit of those experiences, at least.
Yeah,
But now I'm sitting with that a little more. What's really coming to mind is some of the really meaningful relationships that I built with my fellow students.
okay.
I think everybody, at least in my cohort, was Catholic themselves, and so there was a lot of room for, I guess, on the one hand, kind of intellectually discussion, dialogue about what we're doing here, and
Yes,
about what challenges we might run into being Catholics and practicing in the world of counseling.
yes,
But then also just for deep relationship, for friendship, support through difficulties, and some of those friendships from my cohort at DMU, Divine Mercy University, I still am in regular contact with today. We practice similar therapeutic approaches or the same ones, and we meet regularly and consult with each other. And so that was
So you meet
Probably the most.
regularly with some of your peers from Divine Mercy.
I do, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
I don't think there's anything more powerful, actually, or helpful for us as therapists than consulting with other therapists. I think it's essential if we want to develop as healthy therapists. So I think that's really powerful gift you have to be able to do that.
And I've found that is also one of the most important things to me is to not be isolated
Yes.
in my work. And it actually happened, I'll throw this bit in, that while I was thinking of starting my practice and I didn't know where I was going to go, just happened across, it was a coworker at the crisis line, because I still worked there at the time, who knew this lady who had an office of Catholic therapists in Gilbert, and it turned out to be half a mile away from my house.
Yes.
1 mile away from my house, and that was Michelle Goodwill, and that's who holds the lease for the office that I'm in
Yes.
right now. And so I'm so thankful that I didn't just launch a virtual only practice or go find some solo office to myself, which I might have done if I didn't happen across that.
Exactly.
Because I think I would have languished. I would have just,
Got
and it's so life giving to me when I connect with other people, just like this we're
Absolutely.
doing right now. And I set aside Fridays. I don't see clients on Fridays. It's kind of my admin / networking / 3-day weekend day.
That's awesome.
And I try to regularly schedule a coffee with another therapist or something like
Yes.
that.
Now you said this other person named Michelle Goodwin.
Michelle Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, is there a name there that people can go on a website and find where you're at?
Yeah, so in the group, we, as I mentioned, we each have our own practice, and Michelle's is St. Raphael Counseling.
Awesome.
So you could go to straphaelcounseling.com, and that's Saint spelled out. But collectively, we call ourselves Sacred Hearts Center for Counseling.
Good. That's what I wanted to know.
And we have kind of a simple website that just has all of us listed on there.
Good.
Because there's about 10 of us in that office who share the space. So you can also go to sacredheartscenterforcounseling.com
Good.
to
Perfect.
find everyone who's there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as we move ahead, tell us a little bit about the modalities you use, or if there's a particular modality that you use that you're really excited about that you use to work with your clients.
Yeah. It's a big part of what we're discussing today, right? Is the main modality that I use, the main approach is internal family systems.
Yes.
Or you might call it parts work. Internal family systems is one specific method of parts work. And that is primarily what I use in my practice. At first, when I came out of grad school, I was kind of directionless and really floundering a bit and just sitting with people and my clients and talking to them and like, okay, this way, that way, what are we doing here? And but IFS, Internal Family Systems, has given me a lot of clarity and direction with that. I could say a little bit more about that.
Talk about IFS. What is it? How have you been able to use it? Have you seen it be effective when you're using it with your clients?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So just real briefly, IFS is founded on two basic principles, which is multiplicity of the mind and systems thinking. And so multiplicity of the mind, this is the idea that the human personality is composed of parts, and that we're not just a single homogeneous kind of monolithic personality.
Mm-hmm.
And parts are like independently operating personalities within the person. And so each part can have its own thoughts, feelings, experiences, memories, hopes, dreams, urges, impulses, desires, and then systems thinking, that these parts within us interact with one another in different ways.
Yes.
With a lot of complexity. So,
Now, when I first hear what you're talking about, it sounds like multiple personalities.
right.
Is that what you're saying? Is it multiple personalities?
Yeah, so it's not. And I'm glad you said that, because that is usually one of the first things people get concerned about when we talk about this idea of parts, and people could be kind of uncomfortable with that idea.
Yes.
Because we're not used to that. And a couple things on that. So it's certainly not that we have multiple personalities or multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder, anything like that. Perhaps in something like that, dissociative identity disorder, you have where parts have become so kind of separated and fragmented and disconnected from each other that we have such a distinct experience of one part kind of taking over really fully,
Yes.
and then switching to another part. But for the rest of us, these things happen in much more subtle ways, and we can maintain an awareness of having many parts. And we even use this kind of language just colloquially, where we'll say things like, part of me wants to go out and hang out with friends, but another part just wants to stay home and isolate and watch Netflix, or
Yes.
part of me wants to lose weight and get healthier, and another part of me just wants to eat all the Ben and Jerry's ice cream, and
Exactly.
and so we have this inner conflict, and that's usually when we start to notice that we have parts, is when we have conflict among
Like
our
a
parts.
conflict, almost like of urges, like, and those urges are the parts. Is that how that kind of works? Like, so a part of me is tired, right? And a part of me wants to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So that feeling, or that, can we call it urge, is the part. That's how we would label the part.
The way I would the way that I would conceptualize it is that that urge comes from a part, or the
Got it.
feeling, or the desire, or the hope. It comes from a part, and that if you kind of stay with that and you focus on it a bit, and you follow it a little further, and kind of ask yourself the question, what is going on with this particular hope? And it's not to say there's always this deep complexity with it. Sometimes you're just tired. If you're tired, you're tired.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But we also have this capacity to do things even when we're tired, right? And you might have a part that's kind of focused on, I'm just tired and I want to stay in bed and sleep or whatever. But if you follow it, there's a part that is much more complex than just the thought or the hope or urge of being tired and wanting to stay in bed. Each part has a story, has background, memories and experiences that we can really get to know better, and to help those parts work through those.
Yeah. Can
inner
you give
conflicts.
an example of that, like in your counseling practice, where you've been able to identify a part with a client and kind of how that client encountered that part?
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to add just a couple of little pieces.
Yes.
And then I want to give an example,
Yes, good.
I think. So in addition to all of our parts, we have what in IFS we call a self, and that the self is kind of this inner resource that is meant to be a leader and a guide to our parts, that's different from the parts, and that when we say like in self, or we have access to our our self, or St. Paul, I think, uses the word innermost self.
Yes, yes.
Some therapists will use that we really have access to our innermost self. We're connected with it. We have these qualities of, we have these 8 C words in IFS: compassion, calm, confidence, clarity, creativity, connectedness, courage, clarity.
Yes.
I think I got all 8 there.
Yes, that was really
I don't know
good.
if I repeated any. Usually I
all
don't
right.
get all 8 off the top of my head, so.
That was really good, man. I was
good.
impressed.
So we could bring these qualities within ourselves toward our parts, but also even in external relationships with others.
Yes.
And then a little bit about parts is that parts can, there's a few different kind of categories of parts, or the types of roles that parts can get into.
Okay.
And this is kind of what explains the conflict, the inner conflict. So some parts, when we have difficult experiences, difficult emotional experiences, maybe trauma or neglect or just any kind of difficult experience, especially in childhood, and if we don't have the resources or support to really know how to deal with it, then we can start to really take these things on, right? And take on a lot of negative emotion, take on negative beliefs about myself. Especially as kids, we try to make sense of what's going on, and kids are pretty egocentric just naturally, and they look at themselves, and so if they're kind of neglected in a way, then they might really come to the conclusion like there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
And start to take
Like
on
a
these
sense of
things
shame.
like shame, inadequacy, being unlovable, not good enough. But it would be too much for that just to be front and center all the time, right? So then we make efforts to respond to that in some way naturally, to protect ourselves against it. And so to do that, one part takes that on, and just takes on the burden of all of that, and it gets kind of pushed out, suppressed, locked away, or exiled, and we call those parts exiles.
Yes.
And as we try to keep it out of our awareness, or respond to it in some way, or deal with it in some way. And then other parts we call protectors, and they're the ones who are trying to do all of that to keep it out of awareness. So some protectors are more proactive, and they're working really hard to...
the protector is protecting who from what?
Yeah, so the protector is protecting you, the person, from the intense, painful, dysregulating, destabilizing, negative emotions or beliefs that the exile is holding.
Gotcha.
And so the more proactive protectors, we call them managers, they working really proactively to keep those things at bay. It might look like perfectionism, don't make any mistakes, success, achievement, make a lot of money, earn the admiration and approval and respect of others.
Yeah.
And that will keep me from feeling shameful or inadequate or unlovable.
Yes.
If I can get people to love me.
So that manager part you're describing is the part that keeps the organism, the person, moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Can we describe it like that?
Yeah. A lot of times like a future-oriented time horizon.
Yes.
Thinking about where we're going, and looking out for maybe like binoculars, like looking out for mistakes,
Yes.
pitfalls, things like that.
Got it.
But those parts can't always do their jobs perfectly. And no matter what, some people are not going to like us. Some people are going to disapprove. We're going to make mistakes. There's just no way around it. Right? And so when that happens, then these are exiles carrying intense negative emotions can flood to the surface or threaten to flood to the surface. And then this is where another set of parts will step in sometimes that are more reactive.
Yes.
We call them firefighters. Firefighters are not particularly concerned with collateral damage. They just want to put out the fire at whatever cost, by whatever means possible. And so this will be a lot of what look like what we might call addictive behaviors, substance use, or just scrolling social media or YouTube videos, or things like acting out with pornography or other sexual behaviors.
Yes.
Anger and rage, attacking, or even in extreme cases, things like self-harm or suicidal urges or impulses. These are all efforts to just get out of the pain, get away from the pain, to wash it out. Physical pain can be a kind of distraction from emotional pain. And I've heard things like that emotional pain can be actually more intense maybe, or more overwhelming, or more difficult to deal with than physical pain. In some sense, it's easy to see how that's true, because a lot of times when there's a physical pain, you kind of know what to do.
Yes.
You know what's wrong. You know what's going on. It's like if you get a cut on your arm, there's a cut there. That's what's causing it. Clean it up and this and that. And obviously sometimes physical pain is more complex and elusive, but with emotional pain, it can be very difficult to see and understand what's going on. And so that
Yes.
can be overwhelming. I'm in pain and I don't know what to do or why I'm in pain even. So a part, like a firefighter can use physical pain and bring an urge even to cause self-harm to distract from emotional pain. And it's not the only reason why people or why parts can bring urges to self-harm, but it's one,
Okay.
is to distract from the fact that there's emotional pain here.
So in summary, it sounds like there's three different parts, and then the self. There's manager parts, there's firefighter parts, and then there's exile parts.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify that those attributes or those descriptions don't define the parts. These describe roles that parts get into.
Got it.
Parts can take on burdens of emotional pain and then be exiled. Some parts can step into these roles of being managers, proactive, or being reactive and firefighters, but that doesn't define the part. And parts are a lot more complex than that.
Okay.
And a big part of the goal of our work in IFS is to actually help parts to step out of those roles, to be more freed up, to not have to protect us in different ways so we can operate more harmoniously in an integrated, balanced way, kind of more as we're meant to,
Yes.
where we're not.
So when you say
Directing.
step out of that role, what the word that comes to my mind in my experience of IFS is unburdening. Is that what you're talking about?
Not just unburdening. So in IFS, yeah, one of the things we would do, and the way we kind of work through the model is, so that's I've given a little bit of the framework of what it looks like. But the way we actually work is some of this will be in the imagination, in the interior world. People can have kind of an inner dialogue with their parts. They can see them visually. It can be very somatic. We can connect with parts in the body. Parts can bring body sensations like a turning or tightening in the stomach, heart rate, rapid, like hearing your heart beating, muscle tension, things like that. And so in a session with the client, we'll be kind of focusing inside a bit in the inner world and listening and connecting with parts. And there can be kind of a dialogue. There's this way where a person, you can actually, if anyone's ever had this experience, but you can kind of ask yourself a question and receive an answer. It's a little
Yes.
different than just analyzing. It's like, okay, I think it's this or that. It could be this or the other thing. But where you can actually just ask and wait and listen and an answer comes up. And for Christians, this is what prayer is like with God. We speak to the Lord and we listen, and sometimes we receive some sense of an answer. And we can have the same thing within ourselves where we can dialogue with our parts and enter into a meaningful relationship with them.
So there is the possibility with the parts that I, the self, can communicate with the part?
Yeah, and the part can communicate back.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds weird. I know. And when I describe it to people, they're like, that's weird. And I introduce it to
Yes.
clients and they're like, okay, yeah, the framework makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, but you can talk to the part and the part can talk back. And they're like, that's weird.
Yes.
And then we
yes.
do it and they're like, whoa, that was really weird.
Because
but it
they
was good.
experienced that they did communicate with the part. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's different. It's different, you know?
Yeah.
And it always sounds weird to describe it to people. But when you actually do it and you actually can go into this inner space and you can have some inner dialogue and connection with a part in in the interior world, it could just be extremely powerful.
Yes.
Extremely powerful.
Yes.
So, and that goes to, I think you're asking about parts stepping out of roles. And so
Yes.
when we can be in a relationship with the part, we can talk with it about what's going on. There's a story behind the role, right? If a part is, say, an inner critic, this would be a manager type of part.
Yes.
That's really common. Most of us have one of these, and they might be protecting against an exile who feels inadequate and shameful.
Yes.
Maybe got a lot of disapproval and criticism from somebody else, maybe a parent or mother, father. And this inner critic is just laying on the criticism and it's trying. And this is a good, important point, is that parts always have good intentions. They're always trying to help. Parts are not evil. No part is evil, even if they bring a behavior or something that seems evil or hurtful, damaging. There's always a good intention.
So when you say they're not evil, but they can move you to do something that's unhealthy, am I getting that part right?
Yeah, yeah, and I would even say to do something that's evil,
Got
because
it.
we can do evil actions. That's
Yes.
certainly true, and of course, IFS, like just kind of secular IFS practitioners wouldn't really recognize that. They might
Yes.
not say that. They would kind of emphasize like, well, there's nothing actually wrong. It's just a protector doing a thing, and maybe they would say it's unhealthy or it's not helping. But as Catholics, I think we need to adapt that a little bit, and acknowledge like there is evil, there is sin, and we can
Exactly.
sin, and even a part that brings a sinful urge is trying to help in some way.
Exactly.
And this is one of the things I love about this model. You know,
Is
we
that all the parts are well intended,
yes,
right?
yeah,
So you're not trying to dispose of the part. You're trying, is it reintegrate the part?
yeah. I was gonna say redeem right there.
Yes, I like that
Redeem,
better, actually.
but yes, integrate to bring it more into relationship with you,
Yeah.
it's the self, for all the parts to work together. Because a lot of times it's like these exiles, and then protectors come up, and they're protecting in different ways, and they don't agree, and they get into conflict.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
one exile carries shame, one protector wants to be fit and healthy and have a good-looking body and ripped abs, and everybody loves me because I
Yes.
look great. And another part wants to, another protector tries to protect from that shame by just eating a lot of really good food because it's comforting and it makes me feel better. And so two protectors and a lot of conflict, and you end up, not really getting anywhere because it's like this tug of war, gas
Exactly.
and brakes, at the same
Yep.
time.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Some of the ways I've experienced, well, I experienced a lot of is exiles, and helping people understand and recognize exiles tends to be very helpful, right? Just even in the recognition of it, even if they can't talk to the exile or they can't necessarily get to that point. Do you find that getting people to recognize exiles, has that been a difficult thing? How has that been for you?
Yeah. So a lot of people who are at least pretty open to getting to know themselves better are able to recognize and acknowledge that there's something exiled here, right? That there's some inner feeling of inadequacy or of shame or of unresolved grief, or of deep fear. Those are some of the really common kind of exiled
Yes.
emotions. So we can acknowledge it kind of on this head level. But to really come closer to it, it might take a little more time. And this is the way we move through the IFS model, is that, we get these exiles that are locked away, and then these protectors that are kind of built up these defenses around it. And we're not just, zooming through the defenses, but we are getting to know each protector and understanding why is it doing what it's doing, what's it concerned about, what would it like to do. Because a lot of times parts don't want to be doing what they're doing.
Exactly.
Just doing it because they feel like they have to. But like an inner critic, like we were talking about, a lot of times they want to do something like the opposite. He's criticizing to try to be better so you don't feel so much shame. Unfortunately, the irony is like you feel more shame because you're being criticized so much, and then
Exactly.
the firefighters get more active and you eat more food. Not you, but
Yes.
whoever the person, you might eat more food, and then the critic gets more active. But really what the critic just wants is for that shame to not be so bad, the negative
Okay.
feelings or beliefs to not be so bad. And so ultimately, if we go to the unburdening you talked about, where we can work to really get in touch with that exiled part and help that part to let go of, and move away from, become more free from this sense of shame or inadequacy. And I don't use those words in exactly the same way as inadequacy. Like, we all carry inadequacy. This is just a fact of being human. But what exiles can believe sometimes is that because of this inadequacy, I'm not going to be loved. I'm going to be
Yes.
rejected and pushed away, and I'll be all alone.
So that's what I tend to find. And then people in order to compensate, they think, oh, I have to produce or do something
Yes.
in order to be loved,
And that's
in
the
order to be
manager.
accepted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So when I first got introduced to internal family systems in prayer, I was like, Lord, if this is true, right, reveal to me how it works. And something that really helped me was Christ as the head of the body,
Yeah.
right, and we're the parts,
Yes.
right? And Christ as the head of the body has the power to heal the parts. That really stuck out for me because even in listening to what you're saying right now, it seems like when the parts are acting without the or outside of the integrity of the self,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when it becomes,
Mm-hmm.
can I say, unhealthy?
Yeah. 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 Disintegrated, and we
Yes.
start to really notice our parts, and we start to feel like, who am I? Maybe an identity crisis, or
Mhm.
doing this and that. And yeah.
So, what role does the self play in the healing process?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So because the self is, I would say, from a Catholic perspective, the self is where we can more naturally have communion and connection with God,
Yes.
and um, and so the self can bring the love, those 8 C words we talked about, compassion, connection, to our parts,
Hmm.
and sometimes in a very direct way can help our parts to connect with God. And sometimes this will be made more explicit with Catholic clients who where their parts really feel ready and open for that. But even among devout Catholics, we can have parts that don't like the idea of God, maybe feel angry with God,
Yes.
and don't want to have anything to do with Him, and maybe feel like He's more like a critical, disapproving father, or than a gentle, loving, forgiving father. And so, I think this is part of why, if I can put it this way, that God gives us a self,
Hmm.
is so that there can be a me who can connect with these parts of me and love them in the way they need to be loved in the inner world. And it's the same thing we do in the external world through evangelization. Is we don't always just like, and you can do this, but we don't always just walk up to people and say like, hey, Jesus loves you, and you should go to church and love God. And it's not wrong to do that, by all means, but you might not get the result, right? It might not really land with the person.
Yes.
Like, who is this guy? Tell it. I don't know, Jesus.
Yeah, there's no relationship there.
Yeah, but it always starts with they know we are Christians by our love, and when
Yes.
we bring a loving connection in the external world with another person, then and they encounter that love through us, they're implicitly encountering God's love, and at some point the implicit has to become more explicit.
Exactly.
Or does become more explicit, and I think it's in the same way with parts, is that we can love our parts that feel unloved, and then they can become more connected and introduced
Got it.
to God. And I love this imagery of like the head and the body, or
Yes.
an analogy I really love to use is like an orchestra or a symphony, and the conductor, right? And the self is the conductor, and the parts are the members,
Yes.
and each member has a role to play, and they need to play those roles together. And there are times where one shines and the other, and the conductor is the one who's the leader. And a lot of times, for a really, really well-tuned and skilled group of musicians, they can play so well together, and the conductor doesn't have to do too much.
Yes.
Right? But the conductor kind of cues them to come in, or if one's a little loud, he's like, "Hey, bring it down a little bit," and
Yes.
just leads and guides them.
Yeah, that example gives me a much clearer picture of IFS. I have not heard that one yet. I think that's a very powerful one, the orchestra.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to use that from here
Great.
on out. That's
Great.
a beautiful one. I love
Great,
it.
glad you like it.
Can we move into any examples
Yeah.
of, in your own experience with it, with your own development, or with the client, that would give us an example of what IFS looks like in action?
Yeah. Yeah. um, I think I will say a bit about this example for a client kind of recently that had come up where he he was really struggling with just overeating and kind of acting out in a number of different ways. Just a really active firefighter, you know. And he was able to kind of in his mind, in his imagination, I was asking him to see if he could see that part or connect with that part, visualize or that part in some way. And kind of the image that was coming to him was like a janitor. This janitor is just cleaning up, mopping up messes on the floor. You know,
Yes.
messes are spilled. He's got to go mop it up, and the tools he's got to mop it up are food, you know, sex, sexual behavior, TV and movies and other forms of distraction. And it's just these really vulnerable, these really raw spots. And he's talking about exiles there, like
Yes.
the messes, the spills. And so he just stayed in this kind of inner dialogue with this janitor for a little while. And the way we'll proceed with that is we're just getting to know one part at a time. And so just kind of asking that part some questions and things we discover a lot, and that he was with this part, was that I didn't want to be doing that. I didn't really love the job of being a janitor. It's not what it always wanted to be. It's not what it always was. That it wanted to be a little more of like free and just to have fun and enjoyment, like just kind of for its own sake.
Like joy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so from there, that's maybe an example
Yeah.
right there.
That person came to that recognition, was able to visualize the part
Yeah.
and kind of define it in a certain way,
Yeah.
and understand that it didn't really like being where it was.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And about what was making it be where it was,
Yes.
you know, that there
Was
were
there
these
an exile
messes.
discovered in that reflection?
Um, I don't think right then and there it was. Maybe we asked the question like, "What's up with the messes? Where are these coming from?"
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
and maybe in that session it didn't quite go there. Not a clear answer. I kind of know. I kind of have an idea like where that might go, but we take our time in this. You know, we don't zoom off to the exiles.
Gotcha.
Because if we do, it's just usually going to backfire. So there are protectors around those exiles, and we want to make sure they're okay with us working with exiles before we do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who wants to make sure it's okay?
Um,
Like, who's doing
Yeah.
the protecting?
yeah. Well, so I, as the therapist, want to make sure that protectors are okay with us working with exiles.
Yes.
I would say myself as the therapist, and maybe I have some parts too that are, you know, saying that and involved in that, right? But this is kind of the idea in the IFS model, is that we get permission from protectors before we
Okay.
work with exiles.
That was something I struggled with for a little while as a therapist, this idea of getting permission. Why does the self need permission? Right? Because I was thinking, oh, Christ is the head. He doesn't need our permission. He's just going to do things. But then I thought to myself, well, how does Christ work with me?
Yeah.
Right? He tries to get my buy-in, my permission to work with me.
Yeah.
Right? So then it started to make more sense that to seek the permission of the manager part
Mm-hmm.
to encounter the exile.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how that would work? Is that the process?
Yeah, I would say for managers and firefighters as well.
Okay.
Any parts, any protectors that have concerns about about that exile.
Good.
You know, if it would be too overwhelming or something to go there,
Good.
that there's not any objections from any parts about going there. And totally agree, this is how God works with us. He's gentle. He doesn't force himself on us. Behold, I stand at the door and knock.
Yes.
Right? He doesn't
Yes.
kick the door down.
Yes.
If anyone should respond and open the door, I will come in.
Good, good, good. How we doing? Doing good? So, it's possible we'll meet again, right? And we can go into more details about IFS. It would be maybe
Sure.
a great plan, to have
Yeah.
a 3 or 4 part series on IFS.
Love to
But
do
right now, is there anything you would want to wrap up with on the IFS question? Is there anything you would want the audience to understand?
Just that the main goal, I would say, of IFS is to bring our parts together. It's called internal family systems. And so the idea here is we have a family inside of parts. And to bring this family together, to love each other, and be loved and love more fully in communion. So in communion with one another and with God. So to put it really simply, it's just to love, to be loved, to love myself, and to love.
Yes.
And yeah.
And in your own development, you've seen that this is very consistent with the Catholic understanding of the human person, or is there any conflict there?
Yeah, I think in so many ways there's so much consistency and compatibility with a Catholic understanding of the person that, Thomas Aquinas talks about we're always seeking an apparent good. Sometimes we get confused or disordered. We don't seek the actual good, but we're always seeking an apparent good.
Yes.
And this fits so well with that parts are always trying to help. All parts are good. There's never this evil intention. Even if there's evil, there's that's being pursued, there's a good intention from
Yes.
the part, right? So great. That's a box checked. Maybe there's an issue where in IFS there's this concept of the self, and it's kind of godless. It's like the self is the Jesus, is God to the parts. Now, we know as Catholics the self is alter Christus, another Christ,
Yes.
to parts. That's how I view it. That we are connected with God and we can be like God to our parts, and that we can bring God to them, God's love to them, but we are not God. And we
Yes.
cannot redeem ourselves. Our self cannot redeem our parts. So IFS would say the self can redeem the parts. And as Catholics, we can't say that.
Yes.
The self can only cooperate with God in redeeming the parts, but has a big role to play.
Yes.
And we know this in our faith. God does not redeem us without our cooperation.
Yeah, so in the internal family system of myself, that innermost self is a conduit of God's grace.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the source of grace.
Yeah, except I'd give it more dignity than a conduit.
Yes, yes.
Not the source, a conduit, but also a person, an active cooperator.
Yeah, so that self is intimately connected with Christ. Would that
Yeah.
be a better word or a better framework than conduit?
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an issue with the word conduit. I just, I always like to nuance things more.
yeah.
you know.
Make them more maybe personal, more intimate. I mean, conduit
Yes.
sounds
Yes. The word personal, relational. I think that if I could sum up in one word what I love so much about IFS is it's relational.
got it.
So many other therapies do so much good in so many ways, right?
Mhm.
But so many therapies do not bring a relational element in where we can be in relationship with ourselves, and IFS
Good.
offers that. And if you were to sum up what the reason why God created man in one word, I think you'd use the same word, relationship.
Praise God.
That's
yeah.
the first paragraph of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. God freely created man in order to make him share in his own blessed life. That's the reason God created man, to share
Yes.
in his blessed life. So relationship. So I like a therapy model where I can be in a relationship with my client and help them be in relationship with themselves in a
Wow.
really concrete way.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I'm inspired just hearing that part you just said. The whole relationship piece. I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
So let's kind of move ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
You're a
Great.
very active therapist here in the Diocese of Phoenix. There's a lot of things you're working on. Can you share what's going on with you and some of the projects you might be working on?
Yeah, I'd love to. This has been really exciting. It's been a new thing for me to be involved in ways like this. And years ago, I would have considered myself really introverted, and that was more like shyness and
Yes.
lack of confidence and things like that. But really, I've found, like we were talking about earlier, so much joy, so life-giving to be with people like this and have conversations like this and connect with others and bring people together. And so now many therapists in the diocese, before I was even here, were getting together. I think you maybe were involved in that too,
Yes.
getting together to kind of network, to support each other, and I've kind of jumped on with that. And so right now, the big project that we've been working on is myself and a handful of other Catholic therapists here in Phoenix have been trying to really put some formality to that organization. And so we're in the process of establishing a professional association called Catholic Therapists Arizona, CTA.
Awesome.
That's going to be, hopefully, God willing, a 501c3 nonprofit. And we'll have a website. I think we'll be working together on this with a directory, therapist directory.
Yes, yes.
Also, calendar of events, consultation groups, trainings, webinars, maybe a conference, maybe an annual conference of sorts, an online network for all Catholic therapists who are members in Arizona to network, share referrals, consult with one another on issues. Also, maybe some connection and outreach to Catholic schools, parishes, to support kind of the human formation or the psychological, emotional health of students at schools, parishioners, in whatever ways we can by using the network of therapists. And then also, God willing, a scholarship fund to help Catholics in Arizona to pay for therapy.
Wow.
So these are in the works.
Yes.
It's been
It
a
sounds
lot of
beautiful.
fun. Yeah.
And you, along with a few other therapists, can we name some of those
Yeah.
team members?
Yeah. So the founding board members are myself and Michelle Goodwill, the person I mentioned earlier in my office.
Absolutely.
Dr. Nate Verskotze at Journey to Peace, Dr. Christina McShane, and Nicole Rizkala,
Awesome.
who's a
Good.
marriage and family therapist,
Yep.
Aurora Healing Therapy, and then Cindy Bird, who also is at Journey to Peace, working
Yes.
with Nate. So we have 6 of us right now. We'll be adding
That
to our
sounds amazing.
numbers.
Yeah, we definitely like to ask everybody who's listening to pray for this project
Please.
and maybe go to the website if they want to inquire about it. It sounds amazing.
Website's in the works, so there's not too much concrete for ways for people to reach out yet, but
Gotcha.
anyone who is interested in supporting in some way, if they are a therapist and want to support the mission through the labor of the work of their hands in some
Exactly.
way, and time spent, then they could reach out to me. And also for people who are interested in supporting financially, I'll just put that appeal out there.
Yes, yes.
We don't have the nonprofit status yet, but hopefully we will soon, and we'll be looking for some funding to help move the thing forward.
Good,
So
good, good, good.
could also reach out to me. And
Awesome. Yeah, well, hopefully that will come to fruition. It sounds beautiful. I like to wrap up with this question that's always on my mind as a therapist, as a human being. You know, I've experienced healing in different ways in my life. So I'd like to pose the question to you and let you kind of answer it the way you see fit. What is healing? What is healing? How have you experienced it? How have you experienced it in your clients?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of ask the question too because for people listening, I want them to get maybe a better idea of what to expect coming to therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does healing actually look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of responses that come up as I sit with that. If I were to just put it as simply as possible in a way that maybe feels more vague and doesn't so much give people an idea about what to expect, it's being loved.
Okay.
Knowing and encountering being loved. Because what's wounding is a lack of love, is
Wow.
not being loved in some way, in a way that we need to be loved. And so what's healing is the exact opposite of that, is being loved, especially in the place where I feel I can't be loved
Yes.
or
Yes.
have not been loved. And so I can speak personally on that, even just in my marriage.
Mm.
Maybe this has been some of the most there have been some of the most healing points for me in my marriage, where my wife has gotten to know me more, and I found that things that I hide, even little habits,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I've given examples today about losing weight, being healthy, but wanting to eat, right? It's like, I've got this sweet tooth. I got this part, right? He's a
Yes.
firefighter. He wants to eat, you know, and can eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's in one sitting. And I've been quite proud of myself that I can do just half a pint and stop there and put it back in the freezer, you know?
Yes.
And it's still probably a little bit intemperate, you know, so working on that, but I'll boast in my weakness. Um, so, but I would have these habits of, like, you know, buy some candy, right? And then, like, I put the wrapper, like, in the trash and cover it with something, you know?
Yes.
It's like, I don't really want my wife to notice that I got this candy, whatever, right? This is a very, seems like a petty example, right? But it's like, why do I do that, right? There's another part of me that hides it, right? It thinks that if my wife knew this, what? She would disapprove, she would reject me, she would not love me as much as it, right? It's like there's this belief that I would be unlovable in this place
Yes.
of doing this unhealthy behavior. And sometimes she finds me out. She's like, hey, I saw that, you know, candy wrapper. And I'm like, but more recently, I've just been honest with her,
Exactly. Yeah.
and actually, I do that less now. Maybe those things go together,
Yeah.
because, you know, it tends to flourish more in the hiddenness of it. You know, flourish, like the habit continues when it's
Exactly.
hidden. You know, and bringing it to the light and just being honest with my wife and encountering, like, she's like, yeah, I get it. You got a sweet tooth and you got a part that wants to eat a bunch of candy or sweet foods or whatever. And I love you. You know, I'm not, like, gonna leave you. It's not like I thought
Yes.
she would leave me. I think better of my wife than that.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, but we can be really disconnected from what's going on inside. So it's like this part of me thought that I would be rejected in some way if I didn't hide the thing I was hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyway, it's my long-winded way of saying, bringing what was hidden within me and what I was hiding externally, bringing it up to the surface and letting another person who's loving encounter that,
Yes.
and love me in that still, and accept me and cherish me and embrace me. is healing actually made me reduce how much I was doing that anyways. The inner critic wasn't effective at
Yeah.
stopping me from that, but my wife's love was. And we do this in relationships with others, and then through the IFS model, we do this with ourselves. And I can
Yes.
love the part of me even that wants to eat a bunch of sweet food, that criticizes me.
Gotcha.
And so that, and then the beliefs shift. I'm unlovable to I'm lovable, you know.
Yes.
I'm no good to I am good. I'm made in the image of God. I'm a beloved son of God, beloved daughter of God.
Yes.
And I think that is what's healing.
Wow. I think I could do this for another 10 years, and I'm not going to get a better answer than what you just gave. That was just beautiful, right? Just start as being loved, right? Healing is being loved. That wasn't vague. It hit me right in the heart. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is healing. I don't know what else to say. So anyway, as we wrap up here, David, thank you so much for coming on. I hope to have you come back. We can maybe do the next level of IFS understanding and
Yeah.
make a little series out of this, if you're up to it.
I would love it. So I've really enjoyed this. Really honored to have been invited to be here with you, and I would love to do a whole series on IFS and beyond. And,
Oh, praise God.
Whatever.
Good, good. Well, God bless you. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.